Sarah Plain and Tall, Chapter 8. The rain came and passed, but strange clouds hung in the northwest, low and black and green, and the air grew still. In the morning, Sarah dressed in a pair of overalls and went to the barn to have an argument with Papa. She took apples for old Bess and Jack. "Women don't wear overalls," said Caleb, running along behind her like one of Sarah's chickens. "This woman does," said Sarah crisply. Papa stood by the fence. "I want to learn how to ride a horse," Sarah told him. "And then I want to learn how to drive the wagon by myself." Jack leaned over and nipped at Sarah's overalls. She fed him an apple. Caleb and I stood behind Sarah. "I can ride a horse, I know," said Sarah. "I rode once when I was 12. I will ride Jack." Jack was Sarah's favorite. Papa shook his head. "Not Jack," he said. "Jack is sly." "I am sly too," said Sarah stubbornly. Papa smiled. He said, nodding, "but not Jack." "Yes, Jack." Sarah's voice was getting very loud. "I can teach you how to drive a wagon. I have already taught you how to plow. And then I can go to town by myself." "Say no, Papa," Caleb whispered beside me. "That's a fair thing, Sarah," said Papa. "We'll practice." A soft rumble of thunder sounded. Papa looked up at the clouds. "Today? Can we begin today?" asked Sarah. "Tomorrow is best," said Papa, looking worried. "I have to fix the house roof. A portion of it is loose, and there is a storm coming." "We," said Sarah. "What?" Papa turned. "We will fix the roof," said Sarah. "I've done it before. I know about roofs, and I am a good carpenter. Remember, I told you." There was thunder again, and Papa went to get the ladder. "Are you fast?" Oh, sorry, that was Papa's voice. "Are you fast?" he asked Sarah. "I am fast and I am good," said Sarah. And they climbed the ladder to the roof. Sarah, with wisps of hair around her face, her mouth full of nails, overalls like Papa's, overalls that were Papa's. Caleb and I went inside to close the windows. We could hear the steady sound of hammers pounding the roof overhead. "Why does she want to go to town by herself?" asked Caleb. "To leave us?" I shook my head, weary with Caleb's questions. Tears gathered at the corners of my eyes. But there was no time to cry, for suddenly Papa called out, "Caleb! Anna!" We ran outside and saw a huge cloud, horribly black, moving toward us over the north fields. Papa slid down the roof, helping Sarah after him. "A squall!" he yelled to us. He held up his arms, and Sarah jumped off the porch roof. "Get the horses inside," he ordered Caleb. "Get the sheep, Anna, and the cows. The barn is safest." The grasses flattened. There was a hiss of wind and a sudden, pungent smell. Our faces looked yellow in the strange light. Caleb and I jumped over the fence and found the animals huddled by the barn. I counted the sheep to make sure they were all there and herded them into a large stall. A few raindrops came, gentle at first, then stronger and louder, so that Caleb and I covered our ears and stared at each other without speaking. Caleb looked frightened, and I tried to smile at him. Sarah carried a sack into the barn, her hair wet and streaming down her neck. Papa came behind. Lottie and Nick with him, their ears flat against their heads. "Wait!" cried Sarah. "My chickens!" "No, Sarah," Pop called after her. But Sarah had already run from the barn into a sheet of rain. My father followed her. The sheep nosed open the stall door and milled around the barn, bleating. Bah, like that. Nick crept under my arm, and a lamb, Maddie, with the black face, stood close to me, trembling. There was a soft paw on my lap, then a gray body. Seal. And then, as the thunder pounded and the wind rose and there was a terrible crackling of lightning close by, Sarah and Papa stood in the barn doorway, wet to the skin. Papa carried Sarah's chickens. Sarah came with an armful of summer roses. Sarah's chickens were not afraid, and they settled like small red bundles in the hay. Papa closed the door at last, shutting out some of the sounds of the storm. The barn was eerie and half-lighted, like dusk without a lantern. Papa spread blankets around our shoulders, and Sarah unpacked a bag of cheese and bread and jam. At the very bottom of the bag were Sarah's shells. Caleb got up and went over to the small barn window. "What color is the sea when it storms?" he asked Sarah. "Blue," said Sarah, brushing her wet hair back with her fingers, "and gray and green." Caleb nodded and smiled. "Look," he said to her. "Look what is missing from your drawing." Sarah went to stand between Caleb and Papa by the window. She looked a long time without speaking. Finally, she touched Papa's shoulder. "We have squalls in Maine, too," she said. "Just like this. It will be all right, Jacob." Papa said nothing, but he put his arm around her and leaned over to rest his chin in her hair. I closed my eyes, suddenly remembering Mama and Papa standing that way. Mama, smaller than Sarah, her hair fair against Papa's shoulder. When I opened my eyes again, it was Sarah standing there. Caleb looked at me and smiled until he could smile no more. We slept in the hay all night, waking when the wind was wild, sleeping again when it was quiet. And at dawn, there was the sudden sound of hail, like stones tossed against the barn. We stared out the window, watching the ice marbles bounce on the ground. And when it was over, we opened the barn door and walked out into the early morning light. The hail crunched and melted beneath our feet. It was white and gleaming for as far as we looked, like sun on glass, like the sea. And that's the end of chapter 8. Okay, there were some words in that chapter that might be new to you, and they're in your journal today. And I even put the sample sentence from the book, so I want you to read those sentences, look for clues on what those words mean, and then describe the definition of the word. So somebody who doesn't know what it means could understand it. All right, I'll see you for chapter 9.